So our next panel is on advocacy and conflict of interest and why Q cares. And I think that is the question we will have to answer. This is, to me, the sort of central topic in everything that we're trying to do, and the central problem. I'm not going to take up time with introductions, but our first speaker is Charlie Ornstein, who is probably known to all of you. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who's a senior reporter at ProPublica.
Thanks, Helen. I want to talk about sort of flipping the paradigm as we talk about conflicts of interest. I mean, conflicts of interest have been discussed and written about forever. And we see studies that have been published in basically every medical journal showing that physicians have relationships with the pharmaceutical industry, with the medical device industry, and we know this, right? This has been written about for such a long time. We also know that pharma has gotten into a lot of trouble. This is half of a graphic that we have on our website. I could not get the entire graphic in. This is all of Big Pharma's fines, recent fines for improper marketing. It's just billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars that they've had to pay to settle these lawsuits. So we know this stuff, right? So in order to break through to people, which I don't know that this issue has, we have to do something different. And so I picked this picture. It's the president speaking to a group of doctors. And the question that everybody asks when I talk to them is like, well, what about my doctor, right? So we're talking about these huge academic issues, but we're not connecting to individuals. And I sort of think about this a little bit like education, where you have these NAEP tests that are given across the country, and we sort of benchmark ourselves to other countries and how do we compare to Japan and Germany. And then you look at how your state compares, and then you get scores on how your school district compares and how your school compares. But I gotta tell you, as a parent of a kid who's going into second grade and another going into kindergarten, the only thing I care about is how my kid's teacher actually does. Not so much on the test, but is my kid's teacher a good teacher? I don't care about sort of all this other stuff about what is the direction of our country going in education. I want to know, is my kid's teacher going to give him, a good education? And I think as we think about issues of conflict of interest, we have to sort of reformat our thinking much more along the lines of letting people answer this basic question of how does this issue relate to them directly and personally? So our first project, Dollars for Docs, begins to do that by taking the disclosures that about 15 drug companies now, it's going to grow in a little bit to 17, when they disclose this stuff as a result of their settlements with the government, they posted this information on their websites about their payments to doctors, and it should not be a surprise to people in this room. They did not do it in a way that was friendly to consumers. This is Pfizer, where you had to type in the exact spelling of the first and last name and pick a state. And if you spelled Stephen with a V instead of a PH, you were not going to find your doctor. And if your doctor's payment went to New Jersey and you picked New York, not going to find him. And oh, by the way, you have to also go in and manually select each year you want, which then refreshes the data and makes you do the search again. Good luck. GlaxoSmithKline posts PDFs. So if you're interested in all the doctors in your city, don't even try. So we decided we were going to just scrape all this stuff, write code that I don't write, but that we were going to do this and scrape it and make it available so you could go in, type something in, and we would not only find all the entries that sort of matched it, but we'd also find entries that sort of matched it, so you could see if you were off a little, you could still find who you were looking for. These are the 15 companies in our database, and 2 more are going to come in shortly, Amgen and Boehringer Ingelheim. And so we found a whole lot of things that seem to contradict some of what the pharmaceutical industry was saying, particularly that the doctors they were hiring to do things on their behalf were real experts, and we found that they really weren't. Specifically, some of them weren't board certified. They didn't have any sort of articles to their credits. They weren't on the faculty of distinguished academic medical centers, or for that matter, sometimes even any hospitals. They weren't on the boards of professional societies, and in fact, a good number of them had been disciplined by their state medical boards, sometimes for the way in which they prescribe drugs. But we also found that people just made a lot of money. So when you type in a guy like John Droude, who is a Tennessee physician, you start to see a lot of numbers. I mean, I don't know if you can see this. This 48 entries, top ones 152,000, 147,000, 95,000, 80,000, 66,000. This is all over just a couple years, and this is only 15 companies. All told, Dr. Droude made about $1 million just delivering professional talks. In addition to his day job as the medical director of psychiatric and addiction medicine at 2 Tennessee hospitals as well. So if he's your doctor, I think you'd want to know this. So this is beyond just a academic issue of conflicts of interest. If you're Dr. Droude's patients, it would be good to know if he's prescribing drugs made by Pfizer, Novartis, AstraZeneca, or a host of other companies to you. That makes this issue personal. We created on our website personalized checklists for patients that they can print out and take to their doctor that includes details of the payments, but also a list of questions they can ask their doctors. And when I talk about flipping the paradigm in terms of how we're dealing with conflicts of interest, I think we not only have to think about how we're looking at this generally, but how to give patients direct information of what can they do with this information now that they have it. It's one thing to just say, here's a bunch of information about your doctor. It's another to say, oh, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to ask? What types of questions? How can I get impartial information about the drugs that I'm taking? And that's what we're trying to answer as we're beginning to put together some of the information that we have on our website, which is, the first website is Dollars for Docs. But as is often the case, knowing about conflicts of interest raise a lot more questions than they do answers. And one more slide before I tell you some of the questions. The Physician Payment Sunshine Act, which we are moving very fast up to the release date, which is September 2014. Under the Affordable Care Act, every pharmaceutical and medical device maker will be required to report publicly all payments greater than $10 to doctors. That's not beginning next year, it's actually this year. And this data will be published on September 30th of 2014, covering the period of August to December 2013, and it will be available on CMS's website. We've done a whole lot of talking to people about this. This is going to be millions and millions and millions of payments that will be available for just a 5-month period at the end of 2013, and we are gearing up for it at ProPublica to be ready when it comes out to integrate it into our site. But this is the key question, right? You know your doctor has a payment from industry, and you're in search of the Holy Grail, which is the doctor basing prescribing decisions based on this? Because a doctor can get money from the pharmaceutical industry, but could be doing everything right for you. So just getting money in and of itself is something, but it's not knowing a whole lot. So the next step is knowing what does your doctor prescribe, and how does that compare to other doctors? So we spent a long, long time asking any source we possibly could for information about doctor prescribing, including the sources that sell this information to the pharmaceutical industry, and we were told, no, we will not sell it to you at any price. So we filed a Freedom of Information Act request with Medicare for this information, and Medicare's drug program fills 1 out of every 4 prescriptions in this country, and we're a little surprised that they said yes. So we created another project called Prescriber Checkup, where you can enter the name of any prescriber, doctor, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, dentist, chiropractor, and see the drugs that they prescribe and how that compares to others in their same specialty and state. And so you can see Dr. Lewis, who is a family medicine doctor in Texas, prescribed 106,000 prescriptions in Medicare Part D in 2011, worth $8 million. And you can see that 43% of his patients got narcotics, 42% of his senior patients got antipsychotics, compared to an average of 1% for all family medicine doctors in the state of Texas. And you could see information about the number of prescriptions per patient, 67, compared to an average of 18 for folks in Texas. You could also see details of what these drugs are. So you could see that his top prescribed drug was simvastatin, which was the top prescribed drug in the country. His number 2 was Seroquel. He was in the top 10 for Seroquel, and it was number 2 for him. It was number 58 for family practitioners in the state of Texas. So knowing this information is really important, because Dr. Lewis doesn't have ties to the maker of Seroquel, but I care about this a whole lot more than I do whether or not he has ties. He's practicing in a way that raises a whole lot of questions about the care he's delivering to seniors in this country. But imagine when the two work together, right? So we found a lot of doctors who both practiced in unusual ways, but also received money from the pharmaceutical industry. So we married the two databases. We took Dollars for Docs, and we married it to Prescriber Checkup. And we found this drug called Bistolic, which is a beta blocker made by Forest Laboratories. Beta blockers, as many of you know, are drugs to treat blood pressure, and there's a lot of generics that are available on the market to treat blood pressure in this category, but Bistolic is a brand name one that costs a lot more than the others. Bistolic is also a drug that Forest had some problems with in that the FDA told it that it could not market it as a novel beta blocker, which it was trying to do. So instead of not marketing it like that to the public, it sought the assistance of physicians to market the drug. So in Medicare, what we looked at was, this was from 2010, but the top 20 prescribers in Medicare, 17 of them were paid speakers for Forest Laboratories, which makes Bistolic. And we found this with other big drugs as well, where you could look at the list of the top prescribers of drugs that shouldn't be regularly prescribed. Like, there's really no reason why you'd prescribe 2,500 prescriptions for Bistolic in 1 year or 1,990. Just isn't a good reason for that. And yet these doctors are doing it, and they also have financial relationships to the maker of the drugs. One of the great things about the Sunshine Act is that it includes a field in each payment for what drug the doctor was interacting with the industry on. So you can then take those drugs and match them back to data like that in Prescriber Checkup to see if, in fact, they prescribe that in a disproportionate way. I should note that the industry makes the argument that doctors who are chosen to work with companies often are doctors who already believed in the drug and that they're not using this as any sort of kickback or reward to get a doctor to use the drug. And that may in fact be so. But one of the things that we'll be able to see once this data comes out is when a new drug is introduced on the market and physicians have had no experience with that product, who are the ones prescribing that product. And if they're ones who are being paid for that product, then you really can know, where the chicken and which is the egg. So that's all I have.